Welcome to the Virtual World Coaching Academy. I have here with me Ilan Tochner, and we are discussing virtual worlds. Ilan's background is the CEO of Kitely virtual world platforms, and we can do a synopsis of his background in terms of the show notes. We've been discussing a couple of questions around what virtual worlds are and how people use them. So Ilan, if you could just say what virtual worlds are and describe them to anyone who's never heard of them. We'll start with that on this occasion. And if there's anything else you want to mention, then please do.
Okay. Hi, Gina. Okay, so I'll use an analogy. People can, Google and read the Wikipedia page if they want for a more formal definition. But I think an analogy goes a long way into explaining what virtual worlds are and what their value is. Most people using computers are familiar with online 3D games where each user is the player controls a certain avatar which can move around the virtual environment. Now, if you have a virtual environment that is a multi-user one, like multi-user games, Minecraft, Fortnite, and so forth, then you have something that visually looks similar to how you would see or experience a virtual world. Now, in a virtual world, unlike in a game which has a defined set of rules, in virtual world you can basically do anything. And so people use them to do the type of activities they would usually do in the real world. They can meet, they can dance, they can have all kinds of social activities and so forth. Now, the kind of the benefits of using virtual worlds as compared to, let's say, virtual video conferencing is that in virtual world, if done right, you get a psychological effect called presence, where you feel you are the avatar inside the virtual environment. And by this type of projection of yourself into your avatar, you can get the feeling that you are together with the other people who are inside this virtual environment with their avatars. And this goes further than just viewing someone in a video conferencing window on your desktop or mobile device.
Right, that's wonderful. Like we're sitting here now in these chairs, we could actually get up and go and walk down the hall in the main conference. We could go and sit by the seaside. So the engagement and the presence is really much more effective than just being on a 2D Zoom screen. So perhaps we can demonstrate that a little bit later. So I have 4 more questions for you, Ilan. The next one is, what are the benefits of virtual worlds and why are people motivated to use them?
Yeah, virtual worlds, let's look at the recent past. For 2 years now, people have been trapped indoors, fearing or unable to have the type of social interactions that they would usually have in the real world. Now, we've seen a lot of people over this during this time basically meet up inside 3D environments. They meet up in games and interact this way. They use virtual worlds to interact. The goal here is basically to feel together. And as stated previously, by using tools that enable the creation of presence, you can get something that you can't just by video conferencing or chatting in some IM software or sharing pictures via Instagram or anything else. A virtual world enables you to feel you are together with other people, which is what we see as a driving force for the creation of things such as augmented reality, virtual reality, which are basically more powerful ways to create immersion, as in blocking out the real world and encapsulating you inside a virtual environment in the hope that you'll get to the point where you experience presence.
Absolutely wonderful. And as I can verify, I absolutely do feel that sense of presence, and I've made many good friends in the virtual world, and yeah, it's opened lots of doors for me. So whoever hasn't tried it, then I would definitely give it a try. What is the future of virtual worlds, and how do you see the technology evolving over the next, say, 10 years?
There's a few sides to answering this question. First, there'll be development of hardware, such as head-mounted displays, VR glasses, and so forth, that would make it much more accessible to a lot more people. Some people still feel a certain disinclination to use something which they consider to be a game. Whereas once they wear a virtual reality device, they're immediately located inside the virtual environment. They can't avoid its usefulness because they experience it in themselves. So the development of VR gear, which will enable you to have the avatar mimic your body movements in a natural way. You'll move your arms, your avatar moves your arms, you look down, you see yourself, you look around you, you see other people's avatars. This makes presence so much more accessible to people. And once you have that, it basically changes the world. It brings us from a situation where only a limited number of people can experience all the world has to offer, to a world where everyone can experience everything. You can experience things that don't exist in the real world. When I mean experience, I mean actually physically feel that you are in that environment, feel that you are that avatar that you're inhabiting, and that enables something like if people who've watched, a recent example, a movie that was quite popular was Ready Player One, where people put on a headset and suddenly they were these avatars. And regardless of whatever limitations they had in the real world, in the virtual world, they could project themselves to be whatever they see themselves internally. So the concept of gender identity in the virtual environment, you are who you present yourself to be. There is no disconnect and no feeling that some people who are less progressive might have, that you're only pretending to be something that you're not, because you are who you are. You present yourself as an avatar, and that enables a lot of freedom, and it enables you to experience yourself as being someone different. You can experience environments that you can't experience. You can meet up. You can have this type of magical powers where you want to talk about something, you want to be somewhere, you click your fingers and you're there. And you can teleport between places as if you were inside a game, but you're feeling it as if it was the real world. And we'll get, in 10 years' time, we'll get to a situation where your experience, once wearing good VR hardware, would be almost identical to what you would feel if you were not wearing the VR glasses and you were actually inside those environments. And that is very, that has a lot of potential to make a lot of people's real world experience a lot more pleasurable, because no matter what happens in the real world, they can always escape or experience an alternative world where they're not limited by the realities of their own real world existence.
That sounds really fantastic, but there would be some issues with that, do you think? Ethically and also psychologically, in terms of addiction and people not wanting to come out of the virtual environment?
I would position this. Let me answer it in hypothetical. Let's assume that you have a market where there's a lot less jobs for most people, where most people have to rely on some sort of universal basic income, or there might be issues with climate change and other environmental problems that make the real world, let's say, it's not very fun would be an understatement for a lot of people. And those people have the choice of experiencing the real world or having a life where they can have a better, basically they can have a better life. It's easy to look at it from a position of privilege, of saying, okay, real life is great, so an alternative is an addiction. But what if your real life isn't great? What if, and if you're going back 20 years or in the world now, if you weren't using a virtual world, you would try to be addicted on drugs or alcohol or other things to try to escape reality. And those are real things that happen. And those things happen because people have a hard time with reality. But in the virtual world, you can have a lot less destructive on a personal level, the bad parts of the life, and still be productive members of society. Look at the world we've been living in for the last 2 years. A lot of people have been stuck at home, and society hasn't collapsed because people have switched to working remotely. And we've seen a lot of increased productivity from people working remotely. And a lot of people are saying they prefer working remotely. They don't really want to leave their home to go to work. They don't like the commute. They don't like other things. Now, what if they can just put on a headset and go to work that way? They can stay in their pajamas at home and virtually be together in a virtual office that could feel like, instead of an office, it could be you're meeting in a forest, you're working in whatever environment you want, but it's still with your coworkers and you're still being productive. But instead of having all the limitations of the real world, you have the benefits of a virtual environment to enable you to experience a more positive version of your life. And that is the power of virtual worlds. Whether it's people are addicted to it, are people addicted to working remotely? That's not addicted, that's a preference. There are issues of saying that there are sides that could be negative. Obviously, if we were discussing a virtual environment where it's a singular user isolating themselves from everyone else, so you're basically disconnecting yourself from the world, I would consider that a negative. But if it's a way that enables people to have more interaction with people and have more positive interaction with other people, then I think that is a positive gain for society and for individuals, both psychologically, for the environment, and as an equalizer in a world that is more and more, I would say, unequal in how real world property is distributed.
So really, it's really about choice. So it's giving people another choice in how they want to conduct their lives, really, rather than everybody having to have a virtual avatar if they don't want to, kind of thing?
Yeah, well, you don't have to do anything. Right? In the world right now, we saw how different people reacted differently to a pandemic. Some people just ignored it and did their own thing. Other people started working remotely. Some people took that to a more use the fact that they could work remotely to actually move their homes to a different environment, that real world environments. They moved cities, they moved states, they moved countries because they didn't, the real world preference wasn't to live in a crowded cities. They preferred living in some town that has a better, offers a better experience for their families. But the technology, so Zoom meetings, Google Meet, whatever people have been using during the pandemic has enabled them to improve their lives. They could retain connection with other people while making the changes that they want in the real world. So it's a matter of choice. You can, if you want, meet people only in the real world. You can meet people only virtually, or you can have some hybrid approach, which we're seeing is what people prefer. When asked about going back to the office, people say they prefer a hybrid approach. They want to be able to continue working from home and continue working from other cities and so forth, but they also want to be able to meet people from their office once in a while in what is now a real world location, and what in the future could actually be a virtual location, thus giving you more options and bigger freedoms in determining how your real world living conditions would be.
So I have one last question. Actually, no, I have two questions. You can answer I'll ask them both together, and then you can address them in any way you like. So the questions are, do you have any plans to go public in the future? And have you made any plans to integrate Kitely into the blockchain or NFTs?
We're currently working on a new offering that would be an additional service that we'll offer down the road that addresses a very big need in the emerging metaverse. That particular service may lead down the road to us having much greater adoption, and that may justify eventually doing a public offering or IPO. Regarding blockchains, currently what we use, our current offering, it doesn't use blockchain technology. Some of our users have minted their own NFTs, which they sell inside Kitely if they want, not on top of a platform, but basically using the virtual worlds that they get from us. Blockchain technology offers or tries to address, I'm talking specifically about NFTs, try to address the permissions and transference of property between people using a public ledger. If you assume that the information that they present is correct, then you can use this tool to basically manage how content ownership is moved between one person and another. The problem with blockchain technology is that the initial problem of deciding whether the minted NFT, that is a created NFT, is one that represents the real world ownership of the content that NFT represents, is not addressed by blockchain technology, because it can't. You basically, you would have to have someone reviewing every single piece of content that is minted before it is actually added to a blockchain, determining whether the person publishing, trying to mint it is allowed or has the real world ownership of that content. And those things can be different based on your jurisdiction. Some jurisdictions might consider certain content to be public domain, while others might consider it to be copyrighted material. Some things might change after the fact because, for example, let's say someone minted a statue of David, and down the road, Italy decides that it's national heritage and they don't allow individual ownership of this content, and it should be owned by the state and be publicly accessible, or they want to charge something for it because it's national heritage and they treat it like a museum piece, which you'd have to pay to see. So the question comes to how do you use a blockchain, which basically says once it's a certain piece of information is added to a blockchain, it's there forever, or as long as the blockchain exists. How do you use that for things where the information, the underlying information, might change after the fact, where the information has not been vetted? And you see that looking at the news in recent days and weeks, you see that most NFTs issued today are of unlicensed content. That is, they're content by IP rights violations. And that is a very big problem with NFTs, that the NFTs and blockchain technology itself can't solve. What we're working on now may be able to solve it, but it's not blockchain technology, though it will be able to help blockchain companies as well. But I can't, as we're still haven't launched this service, I'm not going to discuss it in more detail.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that sounds, yeah, that's like common sense. It's like, well, who's vetting the people that are minting the NFTs? But when we create items in the virtual world, so the point I wanted to make was, when you're minting something and it's on there, with each successive sale, you get a percentage, whereas with the virtual items that we sell in Kitely, or that you sell in Kitely, once it's sold, you just get that one payment. Is there any way you could get the NFT aspect of items in Kitely to keep giving the royalties of that piece of that item as it gets sold along the
Without
chain?
going into details about what we're working on, the answer is yes. You can get the benefits of NFTs without using blockchains.
Right. Well, that would be very exciting if we could get that one sorted. Because we're really already doing it with NFTs in this format. So to be able to get the continued royalties of your work would be absolutely amazing as well. So wonderful. So is there anything else you'd like to tell our viewers about virtual worlds, or anything you'd like to add before we close and let people know how to contact you?
Yes. I'd like to say that there's a lot of dystopian stories have been told about virtual worlds, and some of the players, the big companies currently pushing Metaverse agendas are, let's say, untrusted by a lot of people. I think that it's important to keep in mind that virtual world, or the Metaverse, is not controlled by a single company, any single company. A Metaverse, which will eventually arise, would be something where you can move with your avatar between different platforms, just as you can move between different websites using the same browser today. You're not tied into a particular service. You're not, who you are and what you have is not limited by the terms of service of one particular company. And I think that putting dystopia aside, it's also important to remember that existing virtual worlds are very much at the early stage. It's like comparing the first mobile phones, which were, like you had gigantic suitcases you'd have to carry around, to the smartphones that are owned by billions of people right now. So it's evolving technology would make something that sounds unlikely that you want to use yourself into something that everyone has and takes for granted. And so it's not a short road. It's not something that will happen in 2 and 3 years. It's a road that will eventually lead us to the metaverse. Right now, we're basically all traveling down this road, and those of us working on developing solutions for the metaverse can affect the paths that will take us there. I'm opting and I'm rooting for services that offer a more open approach to the metaverse, and opposed to ones that are controlled by single big tech companies.
Yeah, that's absolutely crucial, especially for trust. And also people pay a certain amount, like they pay monthly rent to Kitely, and so that sort of takes out the issue of giving your stuff freely and using advertising models as a way to make money. What are your thoughts on that in terms of the mass uptake of it? Because I think one of the things that was the mass uptake by certain companies was that they were free, and yet the data, was what they took in return. So what do you think about keeping on people paying for a subscription versus the mass uptake later on? How do you think that will reconcile?
I think that it will take pretty much a freemium business model, whereas the initial basic service is free, which is subsidized by other people's financial activities in the platform. So you might have subscriptions, you might have a percentage of in-world sales coming to the company. You might have tickets, a fraction of ticket sales for in-world events coming to the company. You might have more advanced account types with additional features, offering a higher level of service or different level options, service options that would basically subsidize the basic free service for everyone else. I think that's the model that would most likely gain traction. And we have to keep in mind that everyone that has a mobile phone is paying for a mobile phone. They have a monthly subscription with some company. There are a few exceptions where it's ad-based, but those are not very popular. Most people don't want an ad before they start a conversation, and they don't want ads popping up on their mobile device to get a free service. So people, once they understand the value and start seeing virtual VR devices or services as an extension of what they see as a mobile phone right now, I think they'll be more open to paying monthly subscriptions, and those eliminate the need for companies to be based on advertising, to base their revenue on advertising. And I think that would be a better path for everyone. I don't think we'll get there immediately. I think it'll be an evolving process, and where we'll start with freemium, and it will take time until people get to a situation where paying for your virtual access to your virtual metaverse provider or whatever would be similar to paying to your internet service provider which is, or mobile phone bill, which almost everyone has. So
Right.
that is how I think it will eventually evolve, but it's not going to start from day one.
Right. And talking about mobiles, will we be able to access these sorts of platforms from our mobile phone anytime soon?
Well, a lot of the companies that are looking into providing metaverse experiences are also looking at providing a certain amount of, or limited type of viewers that would run on your mobile device, on your phone. The problem is that if with a small device, while it is more accessible, you lose a lot of the presence. Because it's so small, it's hard to block out the rest of the world. So you're left with something which is more game-like and less immersive, and you lose a lot of the psychological benefits of using virtual worlds. But the people are working on solutions for mobile-based apps that you could use to access the virtual environments.
Wonderful. Well, you've given us a lot to think about, and I want to thank you for taking the time to give this interview. What would you like people to know about how to contact your company? What's the call to action you would like to invite people to take on?
Yes, I think that the best way to contact me is via my email. That is Ilan, ILAN, at Kitely, KITELY.com. If you're interested in learning more about what we're working on, then either follow up on our Twitter account or drop me a line.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ilan.